I never thought a single conversation could change everything: my job, my future, my sanity. But there I was, sitting across from the man who'd praised me for years, listening as he casually told me my role was being eliminated. Seconds later, he admitted they were hiring someone cheaper to take my place. And then, he expected me to train her. For free. That was the moment something in me snapped. Quietly, deeply, permanently. Before I tell you how I turned his little scheme into the biggest professional downfall he's ever seen, make sure you hit like, subscribe, and ring the bell. Because what you're about to hear is a masterclass in refusing to be exploited and making sure the people who try never forget the lesson. My name is Ava, I'm 28, and until recently, I'd been working at a marketing agency tucked inside one of those, creative open concept. Buildings where everyone pretends beanbags and kombucha taps make up for toxic management. I'd been with the company for 4 years, long enough to understand how everything worked, long enough to watch people come and go, and unfortunately, long enough to see my boss evolve from quirky startup guy to corporate sociopath with a Patagonia vest. His name was Darren. Everyone else called him D, like we were all supposed to be part of this family or cult or whatever aesthetic he was going for. I just called him Darren, which he hated. He said it made him feel old. I didn't care. He was my boss, not my buddy. But despite the growing weirdness of the place, I was good at my job. Damn good. I managed major accounts, built full campaign strategies, and somehow ended up being the go-to person every time something started burning. And Darren knew that. He relied on me. Hell, half the time he took credit for my work. I didn't love it, but I tolerated it. Because I believed, stupidly, that loyalty would pay off. It didn't. It was a Thursday morning when he emailed me, need a quick sync at 10. Conference room B, short, cold. But not unusual. Darren had the emotional range of a stapler. I didn't think much of it. I grabbed my notebook, walked down the hall, and found him standing by the window, arms crossed, staring at the parking lot like the cars had personally betrayed him. "Hey, Darren," I said, trying to read the atmosphere. He didn't turn. "Ava, close the door." My stomach tightened. People don't say, "Close the door," unless the next words are going to be terrible or illegal. When I sat down, he inhaled deeply the way someone does right before ripping off a band-aid they're secretly excited about. "Well," he began, "I'm just going to get right to it." My pulse quickened. Every instinct in my body told me something was wrong. We're eliminating your position. There it was. Clean, sharp, mechanical. Almost rehearsed. He didn't even sit down. For a moment, all I heard was a faint buzzing sound, like my brain was buffering. I blinked at him, waiting for the punchline, the additional explanation, something. "Oh," I managed. "Why?" He exhaled, finally turning toward me with this expression like he was the victim in all this. "Budget cuts. You know how it is. The market's unstable. Clients are edgy. We have to restructure, and unfortunately, your role is one we need to let go." I nodded slowly, my throat tight. Okay. I get it. I didn't get it, but what else was I supposed to say? He finally sat across from me. "Your last day will be in 2 months. That should give you plenty of time to wrap things up and find something new. We'll help however we can." I swallowed hard, trying not to let emotion rise too fast. It sucked, but layoffs happen. I could accept that. Then he kept talking. "We will need you to start transitioning your accounts to the new team member." I frowned. New team member. Yes, the person we're bringing on. She'll absorb some of your responsibilities. Not all. You've got a lot on your plate, obviously, but the essentials. I paused, stared, let his words settle in. "I thought my position was being eliminated," I said slowly. He nodded, like he'd expected that reaction. "It is. Your exact role at your salary isn't feasible anymore, but we still need someone to handle the core tasks. Jessica will be starting next week." I felt heat rising in my face. Not embarrassment, but anger. Hot, sharp, awakening anger I hadn't felt in years. "So, you're not eliminating the position. You're replacing me with someone cheaper." He gave this bullshit half smile. I wouldn't phrase it that way. "But that's what's happening." "Well," he said, spreading his hands like this was just math and not spite. Salary restructuring is a necessary part of the business. I stared at him. For a long time, he didn't blink. Finally, I said, "So you're asking me to train her?" "Right. During your last 2 months, we need everything to transition smoothly." I nodded slowly, still processing, still furious. Then he added, "And after your official last day, we'll need you available for transition support. Just for a month or two. Nothing major. Just here and there when Jessica has questions." My jaw dropped. "You want me to consult after I'm laid off?" "Well, consult is a strong word," he said with that irritating smile again. "Will I be paid?" He winced. Actually winced. "Unfortunately, we don't really have the budget for that." Something inside me snapped. "So you want me to work for free?" "Ava," he said, sounding offended. "It's not work. It's just being available, answering some questions. You know how messy transitions can be. How is any of that not work?" He waved a hand dismissively. "It would look really good for you professionally. Future employers want to see that you left on good terms. They value team players who don't abandon projects midway." My heart was pounding so hard it felt like it echoed through my whole chest. "And if I say no?" I asked. He sighed dramatically, as if I was being unreasonable. "Well, I'd want to give you a good reference. I really would. But references have to reflect the full picture. If someone doesn't handle their departure well..." I cut him off. "Is that a threat?" "No," he said immediately, too quickly. "Of course not. I'm just saying, references are about professionalism. And if you refuse to assist with the transition, it complicates things." His smile was venom, coated honey. I sat very still. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I didn't shake. I simply felt cold. So cold. Finally, I said, "If you're threatening my future employment because I won't work unpaid after being fired, then you can forget my 2 months notice. I'll leave at the end of this week." His face blanched. Whoa. "Ava, let's not be hasty." "No, you made your position perfectly clear. Ava," he said again, leaning forward, "we value you. This is just a difficult situation. Then pay me for the transition period." "Well, look into that. I can't promise anything." "Then don't expect anything." I stood. My chair creaked loudly against the floor, echoing in the cold, beige conference room. "We can revisit this," he said quickly. "Let's keep things amicable. Then compensate me." I repeated, calm, ice calm. He didn't respond. I walked out. For the rest of the day, my coworkers kept glancing at me like they sensed something was wrong. I stayed quiet. I didn't trust my voice not to shake or explode. The next morning, Darren sent a company-wide email. Ava will be leaving the firm. Jessica will be taking over her accounts. Please support her during the transition. I hadn't even agreed to train her. Jessica emailed me within half an hour. "Hey, so excited to work with you. When can we start training?" She seemed nice. Too nice. And she was getting paid 20 Zalosen less than me to do the exact same job. My coworker Sam messaged me privately. "Hey, maybe just help her out. It's not her fault." Maybe it wasn't. But it sure as hell wasn't mine either. By noon, Darren emailed me again. "If you don't cooperate with Jessica's training, it reflects poorly on your professional judgment." That was it. The line. The spark. I wasn't just angry anymore. I wasn't hurt. I wasn't even scared. I was done. And that's when the revenge began forming, quietly, methodically, in the back of my mind. End of part 1. Cliffhanger. Because Darren had no idea just how badly he'd miscalculated, I sat at my desk staring at Darren's email, the cursor blinking on my screen like it was mocking me. Reflects poorly on your professional judgment. The audacity, the entitlement, the absolute, unfiltered nerve of this man. I reread the line so many times the text blurred. My hands were shaking with a mix of fury and something deeper, something raw like betrayal. I'd given this place years of my life. Sacrificed holidays, weekends, sanity. I'd bailed Darren out of countless disasters that he later bragged about fixing. I'd mentored half the damn office. And the thanks I got? A threat. Not even a good one. A smug, passive-aggressive little elbow to the ribs meant to push me back into line. My phone buzzed. My roommate, Leela. "How's work?" she texted. I stared at the screen, my pulse hot in my ears. Then I typed, "You free tonight? I need to talk." A second later, Wine is already open. I almost smiled. God, I needed that. But before I left, I had to endure the rest of the workday with the weight of everything pressing on my chest. Every ding of my inbox, every Slack notification, every footstep in the hallway felt like it had sharp edges. The worst part, Jessica kept trying. Hi, Val. Just wanted to check if you saw my message earlier about training sessions. Another smiley face. She liked those. I didn't blame her. She had no idea what she'd walked into. She was bright-eyed, freshly hired, and probably thrilled to land a marketing role. Even if they'd promised her the moon for half the pay, she didn't know she was the discounted replacement hired off the clearance rack. I typed a response 3 times, deleted it each time. Finally, I wrote, Hi, Jessica. I'll let you know. That was all. Professional, vague, and non-committal. Darren couldn't say a damn thing about tone. By 5 p.m., I practically bolted out of the building. The sun was setting, casting an orange glow across the parking lot, and the air felt thick, humid, like a storm was brewing. A fitting metaphor for what was swirling inside me. When I got home, Leela was already curled on the couch with 2 glasses of wine poured, a blanket, and that look she only used when things were really bad. "'Kay," she said as I dropped onto the couch. "Talk." And I did. Everything. Word for word. The position eliminated lie, the train your cheaper replacement, the demand for unpaid consulting, the reference threat. Leela's face shifted from concern to disbelief to full-on rage. He wants what? To work for free, I said. For months. She sat up straight, eyebrows shooting up. Fuck him. No, absolutely not. I mean, Sam thinks I should help her. He says it's not her fault. And it isn't, Leela said. But that's not your responsibility. They fired you. They don't get to dictate what you do after your last paycheck. A long silence settled between us. I sipped my wine, staring at the floor, letting everything simmer. I don't want to screw Jessica over, I whispered. You're not, Leela said firmly. You're refusing to be exploited. If she accepts a job where she's underpaid and thrown into the deep end, that's on the company that hired her, not you. I leaned back, staring at the ceiling. The room felt warm, cozy, safe, a stark contrast to the chaos clawing at my insides. Leela looked at me carefully. So, what are you going to do? And the truth was, I didn't know yet. Not fully. But I knew one thing: Darren expected me to keep playing nice, to cave under pressure, to let his thinly veiled threats push me into obedience. He had absolutely no idea who he was dealing with. I spent that night tossing and turning, staring at the ceiling, replaying every moment of that meeting, the coldness in his voice, the smugness, the entitlement, the way he'd said, "Good for your professional reputation," like he owned my future. By 3 a.m., my chest felt tight. I got out of bed and sat at my small kitchen table, the glow of the streetlights seeping through the blinds. I opened my laptop and started typing, not to Darren, not to HR, just typing. Rants. Notes, memory dias, names of clients I'd saved, projects I'd carried alone, instances Darren had forgotten to credit me, policies they'd violated, Slack messages where he'd asked me to do things off the books, screenshots of him saying things like, "Let's not document this yet." The whole swamp of his incompetence. At some point, I realized what I was doing. I was gathering leverage, not out of pettiness, out of self-defense. Because if Darren wanted to play dirty, I needed an arsenal. I needed receipts. I needed options. But revenge was still forming, still a fragile shape in the dark corners of my mind, waiting for the right moment to harden into something real. The next morning, I walked into the office with my head high and my stomach in knots. I avoided Darren as much as possible, but of course, he found me. "Ava," he said too brightly. "Got a sec." He gestured toward his office. I didn't move. "What is it?" He blinked, thrown off. I just wanted to follow up. "About your transition responsibilities." "My paid responsibilities," I said. His jaw tightened. "Well, it would be helpful if you got started sooner rather than later." I met his eyes, my voice steady. "As I said, I will train someone during my remaining paid time. After that, I'm done." He looked annoyed. "Ava, you're making this harder than it needs to be." "You already did that," I said. For a moment, his expression hardened, like he finally saw me as something other than the pliable workhorse he'd expected me to be. Then he smiled. The fake tight corporate one. "We'll talk later?" He said. "No." I replied, "We won't." And that was the moment I realized I wasn't afraid of him anymore, but he should have been afraid of me. Because the wheels were turning now. Slowly. Dangerously. I just hadn't decided yet how far I was willing to go. I returned to my desk, logged in, and found a message from Jessica. "Hi, Ava! Just checking in again about training. Darren said we should try to start today." I stared at the screen. I typed back, "Let's schedule for Monday." She sent a thumbs up emoji. Innocent, trusting. I felt a pang of guilt. It wasn't her fault. But she was part of the machine, whether she knew it or not. All day, that guilt simmered under the anger. All day, I felt the pressure building. All day, I wondered how much more Darren would push. I didn't have to wait long, because the next message he sent me, the one I opened at 3:47 p.m., changed everything. It was a single sentence. And it was the final straw. It was almost the end of the workday, the air stale and heavy, the office buzzing with that low, tired hum fluorescent lights make when you've been there too long. I clicked my inbox casually, expecting some mundane client update or pointless internal reminder about the Friday bagel order. Instead, I saw Darren's name. The subject line was, "Professional expectations moving forward." The moment I read it, my stomach dropped. One of those quick, plunging sensations like missing the last step of a staircase in the dark. I clicked. The email was short. Too short. Ava, it's important to remember that your final weeks here set the tone for how the company perceives your professionalism. Please make sure you're fully cooperating with Jessica's onboarding. We would hate to see your departure negatively reflect on your future references. Darren, I stared at it frozen. There was no ambiguity, no subtlety, no corporate nicety to cushion it. It was a threat, not even a veiled one anymore. We would hate to see your departure negatively reflect on your future references. I read it again, slowly, like each word was a match being dragged across sandpaper. He wasn't just pushing. He was cornering me. I felt heat crawl up my neck, a rush of adrenaline so sharp my fingertips tingled. And the office around me fell away. The chatter, the clacking keyboards, the rustle of papers, all of it receding into a low hum behind the roar of blood in my ears. He wanted compliance. He wanted obedience. He wanted me scared enough to do unpaid labor for him. And the worst part, he thought he had that power. I sat back in my chair, letting the cold anger settle under my skin like frost. There was no more guilt. No more doubt. No more holding back for Jessica's sake or the sake of keeping things professional. Darren had crossed into my territory now, the territory of consequences. My phone buzzed. A Slack notification popped up on my screen. "Darren again, let's touch base tomorrow morning." I didn't respond. I minimized the window, my hands steadier than they had any right to be. I quietly began packing my bag. Not dramatically, not in a storm of rage. Just calm, precise movements. Laptop, notebook, water bottle, headphones. The little plan on my desk that had somehow survived corporate life better than most of us. Sam noticed. "Heading out." "Yeah," I said, forcing a small smile. "Long day?" He hesitated, eyes flicking toward my half-empty desk. "You okay?" I nodded. "I will be." He didn't press. As I walked through the office, the air felt different, thicker, charged. A couple coworkers waved. Someone joked about happy hour. Everything felt normal on the surface, painfully normal, while beneath it everything inside me was shifting into place. Outside, the sky was overcast, the air sticky with that electric feeling right before rain. I walked to my car with measured steps, each one sensing with the rhythm of a decision forming crystal clear in my mind. I got inside, closed the door, and let the silence settle. Then I said it out loud. He fuck with the wrong person. Hearing it made something inside me lock into position. It wasn't about anger anymore. It wasn't even about justice. It was about reclaiming control of a narrative he thought he owned. I drove home on autopilot, in headlights smearing across the damp road. As soon as I stepped into the apartment, Leela looked up from the couch. "You look calm," she said cautiously. "Like scary calm." "I am," I said, hanging my bag. "Hay emailed me." Her eyes narrowed. "What did it say?" I told her every word. Her jaw clenched. "So what now?" she asked. I didn't sit. I paced, energy buzzing through my legs like voltage. Now, I said slowly, I stopped playing defense. Leela watched me, waiting, meaning. Meaning he wants cooperation, professionalism, a smooth transition. I shook my head. He's getting the opposite. She blinked. Ava, what are you planning? I paused, hand resting on the back of a chair, steadying myself. I felt this clarity, this strange, fierce composure. I'm planning, I said quietly, to let everything he's been hiding catch up with him. Her eyes widened slightly. Not scared, not disapproving, just startled at how calm I was. Because it wasn't a fantasy or an impulsive idea. It was already becoming a blueprint, the leverage I'd compiled the night before. The undocumented tasks he'd assigned me, the ethically gray client dealings, the budget misrepresentations, the overtime violations, the emails where he'd explicitly instructed me to falsify timelines, the Slack threads where he'd joked about not telling HR. Bits and pieces, threads of misconduct he'd always assumed no one would pull. He thought firing me and replacing me with a discount version meant I'd walk away quietly, afraid of losing his reference. He didn't realize that threatening my future was the exact thing that freed me from caring about my past. Because now I had nothing to lose. And he had everything. That night I didn't sleep. I didn't toss. I didn't cry. I planned. I paced the apartment softly so I wouldn't wake Leela, laptop open. Documents spread across the table, my mind razor sharp. Every time I thought about backing down, about just letting it go and moving on, I heard Darren's voice. What would hate to see your departure negatively reflect on your future references? That sentence became fuel. By sunrise, I had something close to a strategy. But there was one piece missing. One thing I needed before I could begin, something only the company had access to, something Darren never expected I'd think to ask for, and something that, if I played it right, would hand me the match I'd been looking for. It was risky, bold, maybe reckless. But when I walked into the office on Friday morning with that plan in my back pocket, the world felt different. Clearer, sharper, like stepping into a battlefield already knowing where every trap was buried. Darren greeted me at my desk with fake cheer. Ava, ready to chat. Oh, I said lightly, more than ready. He had no idea those would be the last words he ever spoke to me without consequences. Darren gestured toward the conference room like he expected me to trail behind him obediently, the way I always had. But as soon as the door shut behind us, his cheerful fast aid slipped. He sat down with this performative sigh, elbows on the table, fingers laced like he was about to deliver some sage CEO wisdom. Look, he began. I think we got off on the wrong foot yesterday. I didn't sit. I leaned back against the wall, arms crossed, not hostile, just distant enough to remind him I wasn't under his thumb anymore. We didn't get off on the wrong foot, I said. You told me my job was being eliminated, and then admitted you were replacing me with someone cheaper. Then you asked me to work for free. He winced like I was being dramatic. Ava, that's not fair. And then I continued, you told me my future employment depended on whether I cooperated. The look in his eyes flickered. Just a moment of unease, like a deer hearing a twig snap. I never threatened. You implied, I said. Darren leaned back, defensive. I think you're reading too much into things. I let a slow exhale slip out, quiet but steady. I'm not here to debate phrasing. He blinked. Then what are you here for? That was the moment I moved, calmly, casually. I slid a single printed sheet across the table toward him. His eyes darted down. He stared at it. A request form. Minimal. Straightforward. Requesting full copies of all projects, reports, and client accounts I had managed in the last 2 years. He looked up, eyebrows knitting together. What's this? I want everything I worked on. For my portfolio. You have your performance reviews and a few case studies already. He said, no. I replied evenly. I want the real documentation, campaign briefs, strategies, analytics I produced. Everything. That's a lot. He said carefully. That's my work. I said, it belongs in my portfolio. You said you'd help however you can. He swallowed. Ava, some of that might be proprietary. It's documentation of my contributions. My name is on all of it. He hesitated, and I could almost watch the calculations happening behind his eyes. If he refused, I could go to HR. If he approved it, He'd be handing me paperwork that, if anyone looked closely, would expose financial discrepancies, shortcuts, and the missing budget allocations he'd been quietly hiding for months. He didn't know what I already knew. He didn't know what I already had. But he sensed danger. I could see it in the tightness around his mouth. Finally, he said, "Let me think about it." "You have until 5 p.m., I said. I want it in writing. His eyes widened slightly, surprised by my tone, my confidence, my deadline. It was the first moment I saw actual fear flicker behind his attempt at a steady expression. "I'm not sure I can get it that fast." "Then ask IT, I said, "or operations, or your assistant. You have options. And you expect me to just drop everything. You expect me to train someone after you fired me." I replied calmly. "So yes, I do." We locked eyes. Something shifted in him. Not anger, not annoyance, recognition. He finally realized I wasn't bluffing. When I left the conference room, the whole energy of the office felt different. Darren stayed inside for a long time. I knew he was panicking or close to it, because he didn't come out for nearly an hour, and when he did, he beelined straight to HR. Perfect. I wasn't done yet. Around lunchtime, I went to IT myself, casual, smiling politely. "Hey," I said to Aaron, the IT guy, "I need access to archived client folders." Darren asked me to pull some of my old work. Aaron nodded without hesitation. "Sure thing. Want full access or restricted?" I almost laughed. Darren had no idea how many departments actually liked me. Full would be great. He didn't blink. "I'll enable it this afternoon." "Thanks, Aaron." "Anytime." On my way back to my desk, Sam intercepted me. "What's going on?" he whispered. Darren looked stressed. I shrugged. Maybe he should be. Sam blinked. "Ava, what are you doing?" "Cleaning up my things," I said simply. It wasn't a lie. Mid-afternoon, IT pinged me. "Access granted." The moment I clicked into the folders, a strange calm washed over me. There it all was. Years of work with my name buried inside the metadata. Campaigns I'd built from scratch. Presentations Darren had rebranded as his own. Budget sheets showing inconsistencies. Email chains he'd sworn never existed. Reports where numbers had magically changed after I submitted them. Invoices justed to justify cuts that never reached the team. A treasure trove. A vault of truth. A career's worth of receipts. If Darren didn't approve my request by 5 p.m., I already had enough to expose everything he'd been hiding. If he did approve it, I'd have it in writing that the company supported my claim to these documents. Either way, I won. The company didn't know that yet. Darren definitely didn't. But at 4:52 p.m., 8 minutes before my deadline, Darren slunk over to my desk like a chastised dog. His voice was tight-low. "Can we talk?" "I'm busy," I said, eyes still on my screen. He inhaled slowly. "Fine. Listen, I've approved your request." I looked up, feigning mild surprise. "Oh, that was fast." His jaw twitched. "We want things to end smoothly." "Of course," I said. "I appreciate your cooperation." He nodded stiffly and walked away. But the way his shoulders were tense, the way he checked over his shoulder as he retreated, that told me everything. He knew something was coming. He just didn't know what. As the clock hit 5 p.m., I packed up my things again, calm as ever. Darren avoided eye contact. Sam watched me with confusion and worry written all over his face. I didn't say a word to anyone on my way out. But as I stepped into the warm, fading light of the parking lot, the first few drops of rain began to fall. Soft, cool, almost symbolic. I stood there for a moment, breathing it in. Tomorrow would be the last day I walked into that office as an employee. Tomorrow, the real plan would begin, and by Monday, Darren's world would be on fire. But something in me hardened that night. I stared at my laptop screen until the glow blurred at the edges. My mind kept circling around the same truth. I had spent 4 years giving this company everything. My energy, my ideas, my nights, my patience. And now, they were tossing me aside and expecting me to leave them a parting gift of free labor, then walk off quietly like a good little employee. No, no more quiet. No more agreeable. No more team player. To people who wouldn't hesitate to replace me with someone cheaper the moment it benefited them. The shift was subtle, but absolute, like when you finally stop trying to keep a cracked glass from shattering and instead press your thumb right into the fissure to break it clean. And that was the moment the plan began. It didn't come all at once. It crept in on soft feet, little sparks at first, scattered thoughts about documents, processes, the accounts that only I understood because I built them from scratch. Then those sparks started linking together, forming something deliberate. By midnight, I was no longer just angry. I was focused. If they wanted to devalue me, fine. But the moment they fired me, every bit of extra effort I had ever given became my property. My time, my knowledge, my boundaries. I would still be professional. I would still be polite. I would follow the letter of what my employment required. But I would no longer give them a single inch more. And if they wanted to burn bridges, as my boss so kindly implied, well, I was prepared to let him watch his half of the bridge collapse while I walked away unscathed on mine. The next morning at work felt surreal. There was this buzzing under my skin. A strange, electric clarity. The office smelled like burnt coffee and printer toner, just like always, but I was noticing everything in slow motion, like I had stepped outside myself. Jessica waved at me from her desk. She looked nervous. I gave her a small smile. Not her fault, she just wanted a job. My boss wasn't in yet, so the air was still tolerable. I went to my desk, logged in, and started organizing. Not sabotaging. I wasn't going to break anything. But I began carefully categorizing what I was required to document and what I wasn't. My job description never included writing detailed training manuals, or compiling onboarding decks, or creating step-by-step walkthroughs that would take dozens of hours. All the tribal knowledge that only I knew. Well, they never paid me extra for that, so it was staying with me unless they decided to. At 10:15, my boss arrived. He walked past my desk without acknowledging me, which was very on brand for a man who wanted unpaid labor but couldn't muster a good morning. 2 minutes later, I heard my email ding. From boss subject training timeline high. Can you put together a training roadmap for Jessica by end of day? Would like a detailed outline of all processes, context, and account history so she can start getting up to speed. I stared at the email. The audacity was almost impressive. I typed back I'm happy to outline the items that fall under my official job responsibilities and can be trained during my remaining paid period. Anything outside that scope, as including extended documentation or post-employment support, would need to be separately contracted and compensated. Let me know how you'd like to proceed. Best, I sat back and waited. 10 minutes later, his office door opened. My office, he said tersely, and walked in without looking back. I followed, keeping my face perfectly neutral. He launched into it immediately. Arms crossed, jaw tight. This isn't the attitude I expect from someone who wants a positive reference. I let the words fall between us like something poisonous. Are you threatening me again? I asked softly. He blinked. The moment stretched. I'm saying, he corrected, that cooperation is part of professionalism. I tilted my head. And compensation is part of employment. He hated that. I could see it. He exhaled through his nose, sat back down, and tried shifting into his fake calm voice. The one he used with clients when he wanted money. We really need this transition to be smooth, he said. I'm asking you to help us out, Di. Then pay me, I said simply. He opened his mouth, closed it, and finally muttered, I'll revisit the budget. Same lie as before. I walked out feeling lighter. Jessica approached me at lunch, notebook in hand, smiling nervously. Is it okay if we go over the analytics accounts this afternoon? I can give you an overview, I said gently, of what my job description includes. She blinked, confused, but nodded. Yeah, of course. She wasn't the enemy. But I wasn't going to let her unknowingly be used as a pawn in my boss's manipulation. After lunch, I gave her a short, friendly walkthrough of the basics. The surface, level introduction HR would expect me to provide. She took notes like she was trying to catch raindrops with her hands. Fast, frantic, overwhelmed. My boss said you'd be giving me the full documentation. She ventured. That's above my pay grade, I said, and she laughed like she thought I was joking, until she saw my expression. Oh, she whispered. She sat back, shoulders drooping. I didn't know they were replacing you. I let that hang for a moment. It's not your fault, I said. Just do your job, but don't let them treat you like you owe them anything extra. Her eyes held mine for a few seconds. Something unspoken passed between us, recognition, maybe, or the quiet understanding of another woman trying to survive in the workforce. That night, as I packed up, my boss walked by me again. "You're being difficult?" he said under his breath. "No," I replied calmly. "I'm being exactly as cooperative as I'm being compensated to be." He scowled and walked away. I watched him go, and the shape of the final revenge, the real one, was fully formed in my mind now, not chaotic, not petty, not explosive, calculated, legal, unavoidable. And it would all unfold naturally, like dominoes he had unknowingly lined up himself. All I had to do was let them fall over the next week. Something interesting happened. The office atmosphere started to shift. Not because of anything dramatic I did. I wasn't slamming doors or making speeches or refusing work. In fact, I was doing my job to the exact specifications of my role, nothing more, nothing less. And that was the problem for them. They had gotten so used to me being the glue, the one who remembered every deadline, solved every emergency, soothed every client, filled every gap, that the moment I stopped operating at superhuman levels, the machine began to rattle. It was subtle at first. An email from a client asking why a report wasn't delivered early, like I usually did. A meeting where my boss looked confused because I didn't automatically pull up the files he always forgot. A campaign timeline that started slipping because the tasks I used to absorb without being asked were now unassigned. People weren't used to me drawing a neat, sharp boundary around what was actually part of my job. And my boss hated boundaries. He started hovering, showing up at my desk, asking, "How's everything going?" In that tone he thought sounded casual but really meant, "I'm losing control and it's your fault." I answered politely every time, "All good on my end. Everything that falls under my responsibilities is on track. Let me know if you need clarification on what's in my job scope." That last line made him twitch. The Friday before the end of my second to last week, he cornered me again. "We need to talk about your attitude," he said. I set my coffee down, slow and calm. "What about it?" "You're being rigid." "Rallying on documented job responsibilities is not being rigid," I replied. "It's being clear." He sighed the way men sigh when they've run out of manipulative vocabulary. "We're all going through a tough time," he said, "you included, but we need to support each other." That word, support, hit differently now. It was so nakedly transactional. "You fired me," I reminded him softly. "Support ended on your side the moment you made that decision." His jaw flexed. He switched tactics again. "They need you?" he said, gesturing vaguely at the office. "No," I replied. "They need a company that values its employees. That's not something I can fix." He didn't like that answer either. That afternoon, Jessica approached me again, biting her lip. "Hey, could we go over the client onboarding funnels? Your boss said you'd walk me through everything this week." I gave her a sympathetic look. "I can show you the parts of the funnel that were part of my job. I can't transfer the work that wasn't." She looked miserable. Again, not her fault. She confided quietly, "He told me I get full support. He made it sound like you were staying on longer." Ah, so Tat was part of the plan. He'd lied to her too, probably told her she'd have months of guidance. I nodded slowly. "You'll be fine. Just don't let them convince you to work extra for free." "I'm serious," she swallowed. "I'm already doing parts of 2 jobs." Yes, because that's exactly what he hired her for. The injustice of it all twisted inside me again, sharp and familiar. But anger wasn't steering me anymore. Clarity was. That night, a Thursday, I stayed late. But not for work. I sat alone in the dim hum of the empty office and sent an email to HR calm, professional, neutral. Hi HR rep. I want to request written clarification about my post-employment expectations. Specifically, whether I am required to provide any unpaid labor after my final day. Whether my reference is contingent upon performing unpaid work. Confirmation of the notice period expectations, given the elimination of my role. I'd appreciate this documentation for my records. Thank you, me. It was a simple email. But it was the first domino. The next morning, the HR rep scheduled a meeting. My boss was not invited, which already told me something was unraveling behind the scenes. The rep sat across from me, looking uncomfortable. "Thank you for reaching out," she said carefully. "We weren't aware of some of the conversations happening." Translation: my boss had not informed HR that he was coursing me for free labor. HR did not like discovering liability the hard way. She continued, "To be clear, the company cannot and will not require unpaid work after your final day, nor is your reference contingent on providing unpaid labor. I apologize if anything suggested otherwise." I nodded, pretending to be mildly surprised, though inside I felt something deliciously cold settle into place. "Thank you," I said. "I appreciate the clarification." The HR rep gave a tight, knowing smile. She understood. She had seen this pattern before. "And one more thing," she added. "Your boss's messaging to the team about your role transition should not imply obligations beyond your notice period. If anything like that happens again, please let me know." I thanked her again and left the room with an almost weightless step. When I returned to my desk, my boss was waiting. He had seen the meeting invite, and he knew he'd been excluded. "What did you tell HR?" he asked, voice clipped. "Just asked for clarification," I said lightly, "about expectations." His nostrils flared. He opened his mouth, then closed it. For the first time in 4 years, he seemed uncertain, unbalanced. Good. He walked back to his office without another word. Over the next few days, whispers started. People noticed tension. Jessica was confused by conflicting instructions. Projects he thought I'd be handling automatically were falling through the cracks. Clients started asking questions he couldn't answer without me. Slowly, quietly, the cracks widened. And all I had done was stop holding everything together. My final week arrived. The last act. The final shift in control. On Monday morning, everything changed. Everything, because that was the day the biggest client, the one I had single-handedly saved from leaving last quarter, emailed me directly. The subject line, "Need to discuss our account." Urgently. I felt the shift. I felt the dominoes trembling. This wasn't just about me anymore. This was the moment everything would fall exactly as it deserved to. The email from the client made my stomach tighten. Not with fear, but with that electric sense of inevitability. The kind of feeling you get when you know a storm is about to break, not over you, but over someone who absolutely deserves it. I opened the message. Hi, my name. We've noticed some recent inconsistencies in the reporting and strategy alignment. Would love to schedule a call directly with you before your transition out. Please advise availability today or tomorrow. Best, a client contact and no anger. No panic. Just concern. The kind of concern that suggested something was slipping. Something that only I had always kept from slipping. I stared at the screen for a long moment, then typed back, happy to hop on a call. I'm available at 2 p.m. today. Just a note per internal communication. Jessica is being transitioned onto the account, so I won't be involved after my final day this week. I hit send. And immediately I saw my boss's office door fly open. He stormed toward my desk, so fast the papers on the corner fluttered. "What did you tell them?" He hissed quietly, leaning in like he didn't want the office to hear. I blinked up at him with the sweetest confusion I could muster. "About the transition?" I asked. "They asked for a call. I told them the truth." "You should have looped me in," he snapped. "Then you should have communicated a plan," I replied calmly. He looked like he wanted to explode, but was trying to swallow the fuse. "Be careful what you say on that call," he muttered. "This client is extremely valuable." And there it was, that phrase I'd heard him use dozens of times. Extremely valuable, meaning, if we lose them, something big breaks. I looked him dead in the eyes and said, "Then the transition should have been handled professionally." He walked away before he said something HR would have to put in a file. At 1:58 p.m., I stepped into a conference room and closed the door behind me. The client appeared on Zoom looking exhausted. She rubbed her temples and said, "I'm going to be very direct. Is everything okay over there?" I kept my expression neutral. "What makes you ask?" She sighed. "The new performance reports are inconsistent. Deadlines have been missed. And the strategy adjustments you promised last month, well, nobody seems to know anything about them." Ah, that explained the urgency. "I'm sorry you've been experiencing those issues," I said. To be transparent, My position is being eliminated. Her eyebrows shot up. What? Why? You're the one who keeps everything running. Budget cuts, I said simply. My last day is this Friday. She leaned back in her chair, disgusted. They let you go but kept. She stopped herself, exhaling sharply. Never mind. I suppose that explains the chaos. I nodded. I've been asked to provide some transition training during my remaining paid time. She stared at me for a moment, then slowly said, during your paid time. So, nothing after? I held her gaze and said very plainly, correct. The company does not provide compensation for post-employment support. Something changed in her face. Her eyes narrowed, not at me, but at the situation around me. I see, she said quietly. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then she said, can I ask who made that decision? My boss. I replied. He said it was a necessary restructuring. Her jaw tightened, just barely. We spent the rest of the call reviewing the account, but it was different now. She asked questions she'd never asked before. Deep questions. Important questions. Questions my boss didn't want anyone asking. Near the end of the call, she paused. Would you be open to consulting with us independently? She asked. After your departure. My heart skipped. I didn't let it show. I would, yes, I said. As long as it's separate from the company. We'll talk details once you're out, she said. I'd like continuity and, frankly, competence. When I left the room, my face was calm. Inside, I felt the first clean breath I'd taken in months. My boss was waiting outside the conference room like an anxious dog. How'd it go? He demanded. I walked past him. Fine. What did they say? You'll hear from them, I said, which was the truth. He followed me to my desk. Did they complain? Did they say something? You need to tell me if. They asked about transition plans, I said. And what did you tell them? He pressed. I turned to him. I told them the truth. He went very still. A dangerous still. What truth? He whispered, but the tremble in his voice betrayed him. That I'm leaving, I said, and that I'm not expected to provide unpaid labor after my last day. His face drained of color. You shouldn't have said that, he said, but it came out in a strangled whisper. It makes the company look honest, I offered. He stared at me like he wanted to scream, but couldn't. Not here. Not in front of everyone. For the first time since he'd fired me, he didn't look in control. He looked scared. Good. The next morning, everything detonated. A company-wide calendar alert appeared. Emergency client meeting. Mandatory. People were whispering. My boss was pacing his office, pale and sweaty. Jessica looked like she wanted to disappear. I sat calmly at my desk, sipping coffee. At 10 a.m. sharp, the meeting started. The client's VP of marketing joined the call. Not the manager, not the director, the VP. Everyone sensed instantly that this was bad. The VP didn't bother with small talk. We've reviewed the recent performance, she said coldly, and the lack of continuity, and the inconsistency in communication. My boss jumped in. We're currently restructuring. Clearly, she said, cutting him off. And disastrously, my boss froze. The VP continued. We were unaware that your top performing strategist had been let go. Silence. Then, slowly, she said, we will be moving our account elsewhere effective immediately. Gasps, whispers, hands over mouths. My boss's face went purple. We can fix this, he stuttered. We have someone new? No, the VP said sharply. You created instability, failed to inform us, and jeopardized our entire Q2 roadmap. We're done. The call ended. My boss just stood there, staring, like his entire world had collapsed. Because it had. This was the company's biggest account. Losing it? A catastrophe. People started whispering more urgently now. Some stood. Some sat in stunned silence. My boss slowly turned toward me. You, he said. Just one word. But it was venomous. I stood too, calm, steady. Me what? I asked softly. You sabotaged this, he hissed. I told the truth, I replied. That's not sabotage. That's integrity. You made us lose them, he snapped. No, I said. You made you lose them. When you fired the person who held the account together and then demanded free labor. His mouth opened, then closed. He had no counterargument. He knew it. Finally, he whispered, get out. I picked up my mug, my notebook, my jacket. As I walked toward the door, employees watched me the way people watch someone walking away from a burning building, with a mix of awe, fear, and the knowledge that something enormous had just changed. At the exit, I paused. I turned back just long enough to say, "Just so we're clear, this was your doing. You broke the bridge. You don't get to blame me for not holding it up after you kicked me off it." Then I walked out. The door clicked closed behind me, and I swear the air outside tasted like freedom. I didn't cry. I didn't look back. I didn't even flinch. 2 days later, the client emailed me again. They wanted to hire me directly at double my previous salary. And the sweetest part, they weren't the only ones. Word had gotten around. Apparently, when a major account leaves a company and names you as the reason they stayed as long as they did, people notice. Recruiters, departments, even other clients. Meanwhile, back at my old company, within a week, 2 more clients pulled out. Jessica quit. HR opened an investigation, and my boss was demoted. The last I heard, he was managing a much smaller team. No prestige, no major accounts, no power. My revenge wasn't loud. It wasn't flashy. It wasn't illegal or messy. It was simple. I removed my labor, and the truth revealed everything he tried to hide. Sometimes the most devastating revenge is letting the consequences speak for themselves. In the weeks that followed, I kept waiting for the guilt to hit me. Some pang of remorse, some voice telling me I'd gone too far. But it never came. Instead, there was this slow, settling sense of alignment, like the universe had finally clicked back into place after months of being crooked. I'd spent years bending over backward, shrinking myself, padding egos, and covering gaps that weren't mine to fill. I thought loyalty meant sacrifice. I thought being a team player meant being grateful for scraps. But walking away, truly walking away, taught me something I wish I had learned a decade earlier. No amount of loyalty to a company will ever outweigh their loyalty to their bottom line. And mine. Mine is to myself now. The new job, the one the client offered, turned out to be everything my old company pretended to be. Respectful. Stable. Forward-thinking. When I expressed concerns, they listened. When I asked for boundaries, they honored them. And for the first time in a long time, my work felt valued. Not exploited, valued. I still remember my first day there. Sitting at my new desk, sunlight streaming across clean white surfaces, a fresh cup of coffee that actually tasted like coffee, not the burnt sludge from my old office. And I opened my inbox to dozens of welcoming messages. Real welcome messages. Not performative. Not transactional. Not, "We're glad you're here because we need you to fix everything immediately." I sat there and just breathed for a moment. Deep, clear air. And for the first time, I didn't feel like I was carrying a weight I couldn't name. A few weeks later, a former coworker texted me with an update about my old boss. Apparently, the fallout hadn't stopped with the demotion. Corporate had been reviewing the entire department structure. Turns out, losing a major account, their biggest, triggered a full financial audit. They pulled communication logs, client complaints, internal memos. And when they saw the mismatch between the company's narrative and the truth, well, he didn't survive that one. He wasn't fired outright. They wanted to avoid the risk of a wrongful termination claim, but he was quietly reassigned, same salary, but no authority, no direct reports. His office stripped down to a single shared workstation in the corner of an open floor. People said he looked smaller after that, like a balloon with all the air let out. My coworker ended the text with, "You didn't burn that place down. You just let the match roll off your hand," and he stepped on it himself. I read that message 3 times, and every time I smiled. Jessica emailed me too. A short note. She just said thank you. Thank you for being honest. Thank you for not letting them dump everything on her. Thank you for showing her what boundaries actually look like in real life. She had found a new job, one that paid her fairly, with actual support, and she was thriving. That meant more to me than anything that happened to my boss. Revenge is satisfying, but seeing good people escape bad systems, that's a different kind of victory. Sometimes I still think about the moment I walked out of that office, the door clicking shut behind me, the weight lifting from my chest. I think about all the times I stayed late, all the times I said yes when I wanted to say no, All the times I tried to prove my worth to someone who had already decided I was replaceable. And then I think about now, where I am, who I am, and I realize something simple and devastating: they didn't break me, they freed me. The truth is, my boss didn't ruin my career. He redirected it straight into the hands of people who actually saw my value. And if I had quietly trained my replacement, done unpaid labor, played the good employee one last time, none of this would have happened. I would still be there, shrinking myself to fit into a place that was never meant for me. Sometimes revenge isn't about destroying someone else. Sometimes it's just about reclaiming yourself so fully, so unapologetically, that the people who underestimated you can't even recognize the life you build after you leave them behind. In the end, my boss didn't lose because I fought him. He lost because he bet everything on the belief that I wouldn't. And I won because I finally bet on myself. Thank you for listening to my story. And wherever you are, whatever workplace you're surviving, remember this: you are not obligated to set yourself on fire to keep someone else warm. You deserve respect. You deserve boundaries. You deserve better than people who treat you as disposable. And if they can't see that, walk away. Let the truth do the rest. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to like, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs a reminder that justice doesn't always come with flames. Sometimes it comes with a quiet exit and a future worth fighting for.